Good morning, everyone. I trust you can hear me. I want to welcome you, please, to the third of our interactive webinar series supported by UNESCO IITE and Inquire Interactive. This one today is as the third, is about our learners and focusing on their needs around inclusion, resilience, and lifelong learning. And what we're really trying to do is think about what we can do for our learners every day in the classrooms and in our schools that will really make a difference for them. We want to think about outstanding pedagogy, about emerging technologies, and about how we give our children with learning differences some real confidence in their ability to keep learning throughout their life. So today we have three very experienced speakers working with us. Elizaveta Kondrashova from UNESCO IITE, who works in the Unit of Professional Teacher Development and is involved in the application of ICT. We have Laura Brown from Nisai Group, who's a really experienced practitioner of online and blended education, and currently really focused on professional development in this field. And then we have Anne Sivavathan, who is joining us, who's the Chief Executive of the Inclusive Outdoor Classroom in Malaysia. Most importantly, though, I'd like to introduce at the start Imi, who has supported and helped us, Imi Alcantara from Inquire.net, in developing this series. Imi, would you like to say a few words?
Oops. Thank you very much, Paul. I would like to welcome you all to the third and final installment in the series of webinars that started last year. The first dealt with defining and setting the framework for a truly inclusive education in Asia with the aid of technology, followed by the need to reframe learning environments and mindsets to ensure education equity and inclusion. We started the conversation with the big picture aligned with the UN's Sustainable Development Goal and continued the discussion at the level of schools as primary learning environments. Today, we put the spotlight on the learners themselves, in particular, how to help them become resilient learners. Resilience being the attitude and ability to thrive in the face of adversity, which is a lifelong skill in itself. You will hear from three excellent speakers who will talk about this topic in more depth. The webinar series is a collaboration among three stakeholders: the Nisai Group, a global leader in lifelong learning, UNESCO Institute for Information Technologies in Education, and Inquire Interactive as media partner. We are glad to support the discussion and amplification of the inclusive education agenda, an undertaking which the Philippines has a long way to go. I hope you enjoy today's discussion and may you draw insights and learnings that you can apply in your own unique settings. And may your participation today ignite a spark to move institutions to action for the betterment of education and society. Back to you, Paul.
Thank you so much, Imi. And I think we encapsulate there what is driving us all to be here today, and to be here over the length of these webinars, because we know post-COVID that we have an opportunity for change and to make a really big difference to all of our children and young people for their lives. So I'd like to introduce our first speaker. Our first speaker is Elizaveta Kondrashova, who, as we said, is a program associate at UNESCO IITE, and is really interested in ICT for inclusive education. With degrees in international relations and international law, Elizaveta has previous professional experience in education in administrative work in the university and also as a practicing lecturer. So she brings a really brilliant, rounded view of where we are internationally. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Paul, for the introduction. Hello, dear colleagues. I'm very happy to be here with you today. Hope you can see the slides right now. So, hello, dear colleagues, once again. My name is Lisa, and as Paul have indicated, I'm here to represent UNESCO Institute of Information Technology and Education. So yes, today we are here to talk about a very important topic, but I would like to talk about it from the point of view of UNESCO, and also to highlight how to ensure inclusivity and how to foster resilient learners with the help of ICT. ICT can help us with this process. And I would like to start with a quote by Alvin Toffler, who was an American writer and sociologist known for his work on modern technologies, their effects on society and individuals. He said, "The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read or write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn." I think this quote highlights a lot the importance of lifelong learning in our day and age. And yes, briefly, I would like to talk about, to start with talking about guiding principles, about the importance of Sustainable Development Goals and Agenda Education 2030. Then to talk about how to ensure equitable access to technology for lifelong learning, and then how to promote inclusive learning with the help of ICT and how it can help to target the most vulnerable groups. So as most of you and many of you know, in 2015, United Nations have adopted Sustainable Development Goals. Overall, there are 17 of them. And Sustainable Goal number 4 is to ensure quality education. In full, it reads as to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. So what is lifelong learning according to UNESCO, according to the UN? Actually, there is a special institute, UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning. It is situated in Hamburg. And according to this institute, lifelong learning is rooted in the integration of learning and living, covering lifelong and life-wide learning for people of all ages, so-called concept from cradle to grave, learning from cradle to grave. And it is delivered and undertaken through a variety of modalities and meeting a wide range of learning needs and demands. So how can we ensure it? To make sure that this Sustainable Goal number 4 is achieved, United Nations has also adopted an Incheon Declaration and framework for action. And in Article 10 of this declaration, the nations commit to lifelong learning through several principles. For example, equitable access, providing equitable access to everyone, using flexible learning pathways, and last but not least, harnessing ICT. What does it mean? So they commit to utilize information and communication technology to strengthen education systems, knowledge dissemination, and service provision. So how can it be done? How can we harness ICT to ensure equitable access to learning for everyone? Well, lifelong learning systems must evolve in response to rapidly changing society needs and must take advantage of new opportunities. Technology has a major role to play in achieving this. In an increasingly online world, people should be able to acquire and continuously update the digital skills needed to fully participate in modern economy, in everyday life, private and professional, all aspects of their everyday life. As such, digital skills are crucial to achieving key policy goals, including maintaining employability, well-being, you name it. In education, digital technology can offer innovative ways to engage, support, and access learners. New digital technology already provide opportunities for more adaptive, personalized, and responsive learning. This capacity has the potential to widen access to those currently excluded from education. And most importantly, this shall not only be about access to technologies, but also about gaining the ability to use them efficiently, both on parts of teachers and on part of and teachers in turn provide this opportunity to learners as well. Lifelong learning has an important role to play in contextualizing the use of technology and highlighting its application in different parts of life and learning. This is particularly evident where people's educational experience are framed from an everyday life perspective. Learning always takes place within the context of people's life or our lives, the communities we live in, the society group we belong to. And lifelong learning is a useful concept to highlight these issues, as well as for grounding the differences in our life circumstances, for example, related to age, status, gender, physical abilities, etc., nationalities. ICT and artificial intelligence nowadays more and more offer potentially unlimited opportunities to contextualize learning. These systems more and more will allow more responsive learning activities that answer learners' educational demands in real times, and that is the real advantage of ICT. However, still, digitalization also carries a risk of infrastructures not serving the interest of the learners. For example, through violation of privacy rights, exploitation of data. So we need to bear that in mind as well and be cautious about this. Rising inequalities resulting from considerable disparities in access to technology also constitute a major concern. Another concern that we need to support teachers and to ensure their readiness to use ICT in the classroom efficiently and teach their learners to do the same. That's how we create resilient learners, by first creating resilient teachers. As according to UNESCO Researchers in Service needs assessments, teachers would like to develop their ICT skills even more, to be more proficient with technology, to be more resilient, resilient teachers in a way. But sometimes there are obstacles for that. So how we can ensure that to ensure inclusive education, and how can we promote ICT and target vulnerable groups? To improve outcomes for disadvantaged learners, inclusive education proposes to develop coordinated efforts. On the one hand, tackle the factors that have put these groups in situation of vulnerability, and on the other hand, to enhance factors that support them across all aspects of their lives. Lifelong learning policies and practices must take this complexity into account, and in this context, ICT can also be a tool and maybe a solution even. And we need to make sure that schools are equipped properly and teachers have the ability to use ICT. And this plays also a very important role in this process, crucial role. As lifelong learning includes a diversity of learning modalities, people currently excluded due to a lack of access to some accredited formal education should be able to join learning modalities of lifelong learning. Inclusivity can be assured by co-creating and co-designing together with the learners to include them in this process in order to meet their demands, especially by designing learning opportunities for and with the most excluded. In general, learning opportunities should value interdisciplinarity, physical, cognitive, and emotional diversity. They should be built on learners' need and adapted to local context, thereby taking their diversity of background in terms of location, age, gender, disability status as a starting point, rather than as an obstacle. Also crucial that lifelong learning is essential for vulnerable groups in exercising their full social rights as citizenships. And next, strong efforts and targeted actions to counteract persistent inequalities are needed, especially for vulnerable groups excluded from learning. Education has been always the primary means of reducing very important issues such as gender violence, poverty, disability exclusion. And to foster an inclusive and just society, vulnerable, disadvantaged groups must be placed at the core of lifelong learning policy agenda. And then teachers should be provided with tools and knowledge to be ready to implement them. That is why UNESCO IITE has created e-library for teachers. It is an online resource for educators, communication and networking centers for teachers all around the world. The objectives of this project is to boost teachers' ICT competency development through courses. We have several courses, including dedicated to inclusive education. And soon we will publish a course on gender equality and in education and how to ensure equal access to ICT in education. Also, to strengthen, another objective is to strengthen teaching networks, to the exchange between teachers, and that's why we have a special e-teach forum, and to contribute overall to capacity building in target regions. You can scan the QR code to access one of the courses, and I will share later in the chat box the link to the platform. And right now we have a teachers competition on the platform. Winners will have a chance to go on a study tour, but the main goal of this competition is to encourage the exchange of best practices in the use of ICT in education among teachers, and once again to strengthen networking among teachers. So overall, I've came to the conclusion. We can come to the conclusion that ICT can be an empowering tool promoting extra opportunities for life and education. But if it's not open to all users, it can also create additional hindrance which prevents social inclusion. If the technology or service are not adapted to needs of some groups, also, digital divide will further intensify social exclusion. So the focus of educational system today is inclusive education should be inclusive education with emphasis of technology inclusive teaching and learning. When issues of accessibility and availability occur, technology provides an appropriate support, reducing the negative impact of difficulties students may face in the education. To make systematic change, it is very important to have the correct policies in place. However, only having policies is not enough. It is important to provide support to decision makers and also necessary to support teachers in their professional development, include them and learners in policy making through research, service, as well as provide schools with tools and equipment to strengthen educators' capacity building in the fields of ICT and inclusive education. So overall, 4 takeaway points that I would like to once again highlight is that we need to make all the efforts to place digital technology at the service of lifelong learning for everyone, for all, to promote digital learning technology for common and the public good, to make sure that we engage vulnerable learners and educators in planning strategies, to ensure demands and needs, especially of the most vulnerables, and to study innovative strategies and programs to identify successful schemes and disseminate these results. That's all on my part. I thank you once again for your attention and for invitation. I will be happy to answer all of your questions at the end of the webinar. And please feel free to visit our website, our YouTube channel, where you can also find some useful materials. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. I think the comment at the end where you said, oh, there's just some thoughts. It was so much in there. That was such a rich presentation. Thank you. And there's a couple of things in there that I really took away that sort of struck me. The first one is about resilience in teachers as well as the children. I think that's something that we forget, yeah, because our teachers need to be able to do what we want them to do for our kids. And so I think there is something here which Laura, I know, will tap into, which is around how we train our teachers. And there's also something about using technology, and I did a lot of work around working with children with complex needs. It's fine using the technology as long as you know what the outcome is. and that you've got equity about access to it. And so that is something that's very, very, one of the questions that we had sent to us earlier was about, well, what happens if we're in a rural area, we haven't got access to the technology, or our capability can be interrupted due to technical issues. So there's some big thinking to do also about the resilience of the systems to support the children. Wow, thank you. I know you'll be coming to the panel later. Okay.
Sure.
I'd just like now to introduce Laura. Laura, are you there? Hi, Laura. How are you doing? Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Laura is a very experienced online educator, blended educator. As you said, the linkages here is that Laura is now heavily involved and engaged in thinking about educating educators, so particularly in this specialist area. And Laura has extensive experience working with young people with often complex learning differences and disabilities. Laura, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Good morning, good afternoon to all of you as you join us. As Paul said, we'll look at some of the links through to the learners themselves, the needs that they face, and also think about the way that we can continue to train and develop ourselves. The fact that everybody's here today means that it is something that we're interested in and something that we're hoping will go forward with all of you into your delivery as well. A little bit of background about us. So with Nisai Group, we are looking at online delivery, and that is for students around the world to be able to join inclusive educational groups with their peers who have similar needs and also different needs. So just because a student has needs doesn't mean that they are alone within that. Oh, sorry. They are looking to develop and accept other people as well. So they also need to work at their skills and think about the ways in which they are able, let's just see if this will work, to support others as well. That doesn't want to move on. We'll try one more. We'll just do it this way. So, most recently, I've looked into exclusion for students with particular needs and the way that exclusion within school can actually lead to further exclusion throughout their lives and the risk that that can cause to their development across all areas. Within that research, we found that in the UK, students with special educational needs and disabilities make up about 17% of the learners overall. However, they make up about 50% of exclusions within schools, which shows that equality is not really there. Within delivery, within teaching, we're looking at promoting equality and equity to lead to liberation. If the equality is not there, if they don't have those equal opportunities to start with, then we can't build further from that, which means that companies like us at Nisai are then looking to improve that, to put equity in place and to ensure that systems are there for the learners to be able to continue to engage. The problem comes with those exclusions that the knock-on effect, the result, will be a lower expectation of what they would achieve, as well as those outcomes. Thinking about the way that they are able to join in with their peers or to have those same opportunities has diminished with exclusion. If they are kept out of school altogether, or even particular opportunities because of their needs, can lead to them not achieving. And that's where we think that fairness and equality within education is sometimes lacking. Some students need structure and routine. Exclusion of any option will break that structure, and that can then put them at a further disadvantage because they have to overcome the emotional barriers to be able to get back to that same level. And that will have an academic impact because they won't be learning all of the information that they need for their qualifications, but also, and sometimes most importantly, it will have a social impact. They won't develop the skills to be able to communicate effectively. They'll have limited opportunities in terms of joining the workforce, and they could just have poorer relationships with their peers in general. So that's something that education, alongside teaching information, has to deal with. It's something that those skills are having to be blended into the delivery from the teachers in general. Something that we, as professionals, try to avoid is segregation, but it's very easy to fall into that trap of knowing that some learners can do this and some can't. So I'll have a group of you doing this, and the ones that can't do it will do something else. And it's quite clear for the learners to see that there are different tasks happening. So as teachers, we look to discourage segregation. We want to bring everybody together for a fully inclusive teaching opportunity where everybody has the same chances and has the same potential. We need to think about the long-lasting effects of some of this segregation and how we break stereotypes to break that cycle. If a student comes to your class and a teacher, one of your colleagues, has already complained about their behaviour, you expect that, and you'll treat them with that knowledge without actually recognising or experiencing sometimes that behaviour yourself. So the way that we train and the way that we consider bias towards students is very important from the outset for all professionals engaged within education. We want to break that cycle and to give everybody a free start, to start again, to try their best and to reach their potential. As we move to equity, we need to recognise that one size doesn't fit everybody. Mainstream education is great for the majority of learners, but not all of them. We need to offer the alternative, something that will work for them. And that's where an online learning platform in Nisai will look to engage those learners that have been let down by mainstream education, not necessarily by individuals, but by the whole system, that the alternative needs to be recognised as suitable for those learners. They can use that system to develop new skills. They can take the time to build knowledge, to work through qualifications and to build that knowledge for exams, but skills, that development of being able to consider ways that they can communicate with others and they can work as part of a team and they can share what's some of their biggest vulnerabilities and that they won't be judged and they will be supported. They'll build coping techniques. So having a well-being officer, somebody that they can talk to, having short courses where they're able to talk about their emotions and to go through some of the experiences of the staff that deal with learners with SEND regularly. That will link through to, as Paul has mentioned there, my current focus, which is looking at training. So how do we make the staff more resilient and to build that resilience? If the staff don't agree, they're not going to pass that on to their learners. If the staff don't have that information, they cannot support their learners at their best. And so that training is vital to lead to those improved outcomes. Thinking of how that can develop and how it can grow allows the learners to really reach every goal, every target that they've set for themselves and that have been set for them. We'll focus on those three keywords: inclusivity, positivity, and opportunity. Being able to create an environment for the learners to fully engage will make a difference, and that builds their resilience. If they know what can happen, what they can expect, how they should be treated, then they will go forward to expect that in other parts of their lives as well. So as they move into the workplace, for example, they should know what to expect. Building resilience within education doesn't stop as they leave the classroom. It is for the rest of their future. That gives them the liberation to go forward. It means that they build that resilience and take it with them into the rest of their lives. There's a quote here from a UNICEF piece which says that we need to recognise that every child really should enjoy full and decent conditions so that they can go forward to promote self-reliance. They should look to themselves as to how they can push that forward. And that's the real tool that they need to leave their education with: how to speak for themselves and ensure that they can engage within their community. So we want them to build their expectations and to know what they can do and what they should expect. They should grow and they should plan for the future. What we find with a lot of SEND students is that they look at the now. They don't necessarily think about what their future might hold and how far they can go. And finally, we'll think about the fact that that will link to community. As I've mentioned, it's not just the learner that has to build these skills. It is within the whole school, and it also goes further than that. Within schooling, there has been an attempt to include SEND students within that, but it's not gone far enough. We need to think about social exclusion. A lot of exclusion within school will lead to them being completely segregated, and that will include social exclusion. How can we involve the wider community to build these schools and to help those learners then to achieve more and to find something that will cater for their needs? So within education, we have got social community. That's a community between the learners, their peers, within school, the wider schooling network of the professionals that work there, but also to include the parents and other professionals external to that school and the community within the town that you live in. So ways in which education can link the support that can be given, and that might link to a vocational area. So not every student will be great at English and maths and science. Some of them will be much better at a more hands-on vocational area. And equity, true equity within education, needs to give equal footing to every subject that they can take to lead to their professional development. Involving parents, explaining what's happening, asking for support, having events that parents can attend to engage them within what is being taught and those tools that we are giving the learners. Supporting the parents within their household, how they can ask for more support from their community, from their governments, ways that they can build their own network. Parents of learners with SEND quite often get most from working with other parents of learners with SEND. taking from their experiences and seeing what has worked and what hasn't, and being able to band together to be a louder voice as they push for change. So the important thing with all of the work that we do and everything that Nisai has really been based on is putting the child at the centre. How we give them a voice, but also how we support those around them with that voice to really push for change. That's me for now, thank you.
Wow, thank you, Lisa. There's something that I was reminded of that great phrase, it takes a village to raise a child.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think what we're seeing particularly in this webinar is how with focusing absolutely on the child rather than the system, we start to influence the system, which I think is really, really important and a massive lesson for us all. And you really, really brought that out. I think also the piece about what real opportunity is, because our young people learning differences, they know what opportunity looks and feels like. It may look and feel different to what ours is, but that's not the point. And the final thing I think is there was a question that came through earlier, which was about grit. How does grit relate to resilience? And I think you touched in there really, really powerfully, which is, resilience is the bounce back, but grit is the ability to know it's going to be okay. So there's something really important about how we talk to our children and young people about how it's going to be okay, and so that they know when they're going to adulthood, it will be okay. Yeah. That true piece about grit. That was amazing. Thank you, Laura. And I know you'll be happy to take questions in our short question and answer session at the end. Brilliant. Yeah. So as I'm just a little bit rough, we have to move on, Laura. So just quickly, our final speaker is Anne Sivanathan, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the Inclusive Outdoor Classroom in Malaysia. And Anne, I know you've had absolute twists to get here, and thank you so much for being here today. I'm going to hand straight over to you, Anne, and I hope that you've got everything that you need. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon and good morning. I'm just going to share my screen now. Can you see the screen?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, Anne, we can hear you and see you. We're all good.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay.
No problem.
I would start off by asking a question as in, what is resilience? And I know we all have our own versions of that one, but I'd just like to, talk about three main points I feel which we really worked on when we do our program, when we work with children and families and with policymakers in our program. And the definition is ability to bounce back from challenges, and the characteristics is adaptability, perseverance, positivity, and the importance of it is to help navigate setbacks and grow stronger. And I'm really going to be talking to you about incidents which happened after the pandemic and how we feel that, resilience is much needed and how it has been used with children and with families and with policymakers, teachers and everyone literally working around children. And the pictures you can see here this is what happened during COVID. And when the movement control order was lifted and children could actually gather. So we did not deprive them of activities outdoors or with technology. And also the picture which you can see, a picture of a park. And I'll tell you more about that is because what has happened, I think we all know, in the lockdowns, our children did not have the ability to go see therapists. They were out of school for a very, very long time. And families were going through mental health issues, and so were the children. And so some of the strategies we did to actually help them combat this. I'm sorry, I don't know what happened. Okay, so when can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay. If you speak, you may speak a little louder, Anne.
Okay, all right. Sorry about that. All right.
That's fine.
Okay. So thank you. So fostering resilient learners, and what we felt is, some of the strategies we used for the educators were to encourage growth mindset, teaching them problem-solving skills, promoting self-reflection and support learning, support seeking. And we felt that, everyone, especially the educators that we worked with in the government sector and in the private sector, technology, teaching using technology was a bit of a challenge for everyone involved. And so we really had to speak resilience with them first before we could even allow them to empower the students, because I'm sure a lot of you experienced that as well. I mean, we were all at a block and we didn't really know how to be using it, and also families. So we really had to build the communication with the families as in, this is what we're going to do so that your child will not be missing out on a lot of things, but instead they will be part of the process. Social skills were not going to be happening just as yet, but at least they would meet their friends online. And how do we do it? Especially children with disabilities, and how do you get them to be on track? So I think the earlier speaker was actually talking about, looking at the child as a child and not the setbacks, and instead of focusing on that, let's just focus on the strengths. And we felt that, while they were learning online, we saw a lot of different characteristics which helped us into our strength identification and strength learning. In fact, one of our children that we actually worked with, and he told his mom, "I'm so glad everyone's doing things online now, because that's my life. I can't go to school. And so it's good that everyone has a feel of what I'm going through." And so to do these things with the teachers was a great task. But we never stopped it, because we had, because we worked outdoors and schools were closed. So we actually had to get permission from our authorities, as in, can we work with our children who have lost a lot of time already? How do we bring back this, resilience with them? How do we get them to bounce back? And as you can see in the pictures, that's what we did. There was a lot of teaching, there was a lot of coaching, and it was a whole thing altogether. And, and we tried. It was tough. And when we talk about maximizing lifelong learning opportunities, what is that? How long is lifelong? Is it going to be when they get into adulthood or teenage years? So what we decided as in our team, and we actually spoke about it, is that we really wanted to acknowledge their strengths so that will help them towards their lifelong learning. And so we worked very, very closely with families, because the children has really missed out on a lot of teaching or learning. Visits to the therapist was no longer there. Doing teletherapy worked, but not all children can actually cope with that. Families had to work, and we also have had the lack of technology for some people, where their cameras could not be on because data needed to be shared. And so, a lot of families had technology, but no Wi-Fi. A lot of them had Wi-Fi, but lack of devices where the children could actually work. And so we really we didn't want them to miss out on those learning opportunities because it was like 2 years. But in some cases, we could not. And when we talk about maximizing lifelong learning opportunities, I think we have failed in some ways for our children, because a lot of them have lost that, especially children who had behavior problems, and for them to be in a social setting for 2 years, it was just not there. And when they came back, we didn't even recognize them anymore because they have really changed when you actually saw them face to face. And children with speech delays, how do you make up time that has been lost? We have to start again. And that was very difficult for our teachers because, most of them were the developmental age of 5, but as far as a lot of skills, some were like 2.5, some were 3. How do we do assessments again when the funding was just not there and we didn't have enough trained personnel to actually do that? So what's your definition of lifelong learning? We ask ourselves. And of course, there were various opportunities like a formal education, which was lost. So we had to work very closely with the families to actually speak to them, to have video calls and to see where their children were. And not all teachers were trained to actually do that. And that also posed a great challenge. How did we get them back on track? Self-directed learning. Now, we really emphasized a lot on this because we had to coach our team that, what was actually going on. And we're not the experts. So we actually had to learn from different support systems to ensure that our teachers and our children were not left out. Online courses really helped us. Workshops and more. What is that more? That more is to really, working in partnerships with people who have done this, who know how to do it. And so we had to engage them to teach us how do we work online. And that means funding. And, and during COVID, during the pandemic, as most of us would know, and all you listening here, how funding was really disrupted in most cases. Our funders became fatigue funders because they were like, why do we need to fund programs now when you guys are not doing anything? So it was really hard to convince them that we really got to maximize lifelong learning opportunities in these families, in these children, in the team members as well, so that children will not be left out. And when it's time for them to go back into schools again, teachers will not have a great struggle, as in if they are in year 3, for example, or in the preschool classrooms, age 5, technically they have lost 2 years, so they are maybe at 3. So, so how do teachers teach a 3-year-old when they're not trained to do that and they're used to, training a 5-year-old? That was one of our major, major challenges. And we really had to maximize the outdoors so that, our social distancing could be practiced because we had very strict laws in our country, Malaysia. But we never stopped. We continued all the different activities like music, blogs, art and craft, as you can see in the pictures, all with a mask. It was tough. It was really, really tough. But we had to remind our policymakers, we had to remind our teachers that we cannot stop all these things because it is so important to have that resilience in learning. And what is the benefits of this resilience? I know we all know about it. It's the persistence in the educational goals. And what's the educational goals? Our country, we have a zero reject policy. We're a treaty to the United Nations conventions, which the other speaker very nicely mentioned about the article in, UN that every child's rights need to be there. And how did we do that? We just had to, continue our persistence. And then also we we told our team that you have to embrace challenges and learning from failures. And during this time, we had a lot of failures because we were all learning, but we did not give up. We cannot give up because the families were depending on us. The families needed that support from the educational system so that their child will not be left out further. And so we had to train and retrain. And the most important thing that I saw was, a lot of children and a lot of families were really experiencing that great mental health issues where most of us are not trained in that one, but we had to learn. We had to engage people who work in the, mental health industry so that they could come and help us have that positive impact on the mental health and well-being. And, you may ask, mental health for who? For children or for families? And for us, we really emphasize on the team that was working with the children because they were lost because they had their own families to actually care for. And when you want to work with children online, it was a big task. It was a big challenge, but they coped. They coped. You can see the pictures there. The picture on your extreme left, a mother and a child coming for our drum sessions just to feel socially connected but physically distant, and it was good to see them all wanting to actually come out and to ensure that we bounce back, quickly and not be left behind. The conclusion now, I think we all are talking about UN's Sustainable Developmental Goals. And we really talked about goal number 4, quality education. We did not want to lose out on this quality education. And what is quality education? We had to remind our teachers what we are a treaty at and what our education policies are. And most importantly, what do the assessment for the children say? What are the individual educational plans for them now? If we want to talk about resilient and lifelong learning, we have to keep on looking at individual educational plans like short-term goals and long-term goals. We had to remind teachers that this was very important if we're talking about quality education. And number 3, good health and well-being. We need to ensure that the health is good and well-being is maintained. Otherwise, how do we achieve quality education? And most importantly, partnership with the goals. What do I mean by this? We really had to work with policymakers, with the community at large, because we needed support so that we can get permission to work with the children after COVID I'm talking about. And even now, we need the community support so that we can do activities for the children to build that social connection and that behavior, socially, so that they can be part of community, not just the school system. We really need to partner with everybody who's been doing this already. What's the conclusion of all this besides UN Sustainable Developmental Goals, which we really worked on goal number 4, number 3, number 17? And why I put goal number 4 first and not, according to its numbers, because I feel that if you want to achieve quality education, that's our main goal. We need good health and also partnership. So we cannot work in silos anymore, because we realize that if we're going to work in silos, we cannot get the community at large to look at what we are trying to do for children to ensure that, resilience is with them and that lifelong learning, we need that. And just want to recap on the key points. Resilience helps learners overcome obstacles, provide. People working with them are trained on how to actually do this. And there's just not one way, but we have to use different kinds of methodology to ensure that this thing will help them overcome obstacles. Lifelong learning offers continuous growth. We know that even we as adults, we are continuously learning on a daily basis, because That's how it is. Children change. And with the growth of technology, with the growth of online learning, it's come to a place where sometimes they can teach us more because that is way of life for them, and we have to relearn. And that for me is lifelong learning offers continuous growth. And if we think that, I'm at this age, I'm the educator and I know it all, guess what? We're going to fail miserably. And the child who is advanced is also going, and we are also going to be failing them because we are not keeping up to their pace. And if we don't keep up to their pace, how can we achieve this lifelong learning when they are ahead of us? And the call to action, which I feel is so important, is that we really have to foster resilience and embrace lifelong learning for personal and professional development. And that means we have to continuously educate policymakers, educate our teachers as to what is the latest thing that is happening. How does this online teaching work if you don't fit in the classroom system? What can you do? Who can we go for assistance? And after knowing all this, how can we get the right funding to ensure that no child is left behind? How can we ensure that the zero reject policy of our country is executed to its level? And most importantly, how can we ensure that children's rights are not being taken away from them?
Thank you, Anne. I can see a whole set of comments coming in supporting exactly the points you're making, and pulling out those themes about quality education starts with our resilience as educators. This is becoming really, really systemically important post-COVID. It's been such a great change. Although I think lots of governments would like to pretend that that it didn't happen and that we're in a situation normal, but we're not. And we're not as educators either. So this huge piece that you've highlighted, and Laura highlighted, and Lisa too, about what is it that teachers know how to do to support resilience? What is it that system and communities are doing? And I know this question about stakeholders has come up in the chat again and again. I was minded about the positive psychology piece that you're reflecting on, Anne, and Seligman's work. And, the first thing he said around what makes a good positive classroom or a good positive experience is a safe, stable and secure learning environment. And of course, what you pointed out was that was taken away. But it also counts for us as well. And then the next one, supportive relationships, a tight-knit community, belonging, opportunities for skill building, decision-making and planning, and social and cultural integration. None of those are about curriculum. All of those are about how we approach the child and their education in the wider social context. I think that's a point that you made really, really well. I'm ever so conscious of time, and we have some questions that have been coming in. So if Laura and Lisa, if you're still there, we've got time for a couple of questions along with Anne. So the first one that we have, I think, what is the impact of parents on resilience of learners? Anybody's got some views on that? What's the impact of parents? Or maybe the relationship with parents. Any views? Laura? Lisa?
Okay, yeah, I think that parents as well as teachers play a very important role in creating resilient learners, because as I said, just we cannot separate learning from our everyday life, because we always need to take it into consideration that a child that does not have a stable household, for example, cannot be a resilient learner, because there's no opportunity for them to just like to have basic learning opportunities, because when there is no basis for this, lifelong learning is not possible. So that's why I think it's also important to make sure to make sure that every child, every learner has a safe and stable household, and then it will be a basis for great education.
Okay, cool. Any other thoughts?
Yeah,
I think it's important that that communication makes a full cycle between school and parents. From what Lisa was saying, it's important that the home life is good, but they might also find that in school, because of the structure and the routine, the child can fit into what happens there, and they go home and they dysregulate and they have a breakdown and they struggle on something that needs to come back and be fed to us. So that tool can make a wider bubble around them to support them in all areas. So that ongoing communication with parents, again, is vital to support student in and out of classroom.
Okay, superb. And any thoughts?
yeah, I think, parents need to be educated that, mistakes can be viewed as opportunities, and they can actually, bounce back and take risks and be willing to move forward.
Okay, so another question that I think is really specific, which was, and I have a possible answer to, so I wanted to come to it, which is in what ways, what is a good teaching strategy model for inclusive education? So I think this comes up a lot. It's come up in a number of webinars that we've done. People quite rightly seeking some kind of structure. I always recommend, obviously you as colleagues will have your views on the structure that you use. A place to start is the Universal Design for Learning, UDL. And I think if people have an opportunity, we'll put a link to UDL and CAST in the follow-up materials. But, in terms of a place to start in structuring your learning environments, UDL can be a really big help. Has anybody else got any other thoughts about strategy models and things, practice that they might have seen that's really good? No is a fine answer sometimes.
Can I just share?
Yeah.
Okay. I think UDL is really good, but most importantly, I feel that to ensure that inclusion is done to express is that it's very important for families to know an assessment is much needed. And as soon as that assessment is done, and that assessment needs to be discussed with the teachers who's going to be teaching them, not just take that piece of paper from the specialist and just give it to them, and the teacher's clueless as to what to do. And once the teacher knows exactly what this assessment is all about, and that's where they come and they form this individual educational plan with the teacher and with the family, and to see what the system is all about, and to look at how best can this child's diagnosis or this child's assessment by the professional be part of the curriculum of the school. So for me, I feel that's very important, and a lot of families in our country get assessed, but the information is not passed to the teachers, and so the teachers don't know what to do, and the child is just filling up the space in the classroom, and that's a bit of a challenge. Thank you.
Brilliant. We have time, well, we've run over time, but I think one other question that's come up a couple of times, which is about what about initiatives or methodologies around teaching children who might be in really rural areas or less accessed Indigenous populations? Do we have any experience about those very hardest to reach children who might have learning difficulties? Anybody?
Again, I think that comes back to community and about being able to work together, because although there are plenty of tools and there's lots of networking that we can do with colleagues around the world using online platforms, that's not always that option, or the consistency of a connection's not always there. Having a wider community that can work together and support them in those different areas is going to be pretty key within those ones. Looking at the ways that they develop and what is already in place within that community and what support maybe a few different people will need and can be brought in, that wider awareness is key.
I know that's certainly a model that was being used in Canada, actually, with very hard to reach communities up in the Arctic Circle. Any other thoughts, colleagues?
Well, yeah, once again, it's very important, yeah, to work with the communities, but sometimes in some regions, if we're talking not only about rural areas, there are still some areas of the world where basic education is still a very important topic. UNESCO has Priority Africa as just making sure that children in all regions of the world and of that particular area has the access to education. But it is not always possible to do it only with the help of communities. It all comes down to, again, to policymakers, decision makers, to make sure that all people have equal access to basic educational equipment, tools, technology now is also a burning question, but it is a hard thing to do, and it is not a quick process. It takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of resilience and commitment to improve the situation. But
Thank you.
That's what we need to do, yes.
So I'm just taking from there, conscious of time, I'm just taking from there something really important, and one of these themes that's run through, which is about, we're also talking about the ability and resilience of our communities and our families to work with the children and to be guided by the children and to make that difference for the future, which I think Anne referred to really, really clearly. And then when Laura's talking about creating true equity, it's actually not just about the child. This may be just where we're seeing the requirements around resilience. It's actually about those circles, like the stone in the pond, the ripples that go out from the child in the center, the parents, the teachers. We all need to have that resilience too. Unfortunately, we have to end. I think everybody could sit and talk for another hour. I just want to say thank you so much to Lisa, to Laura, and to Anne, and to all the team at the Inquirer and IIME, and to the Nisai team that supported these webinars. There are certificates available for people for CPD. The webinar itself will be made available, as we'll be referencing to all the materials. So the slides from colleagues will be made available as well. Should you have any queries, please just contact the team at Nisai Group. We love to hear from everybody. We've been doing these a while now. I hope you have a brilliant day wherever you are. And thank you so much for all the work you're doing for our children. Bye.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you.